Ever get that feeling like you want to just dive right into a topic?
Yeah.
Really get to the core of something without having to sift through tons and tons of information.
Yeah, totally. It's like you want the concentrated knowledge, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're all about here, right?
Yeah.
Getting right to the heart of things. And today we're taking a deep dive into something called micro-teaching.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's a pretty
Yeah.
fascinating approach to education and skill development.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's all about really homing in on those teaching skills.
I like it already. So, what are we looking at today? What kind of sources do we have for this deep dive?
Well, we've got some really compelling research here, stuff that digs into the why and the how of micro-teaching, and really why it can be so beneficial for, well, everyone, really, whether you're brand new to teaching or you've been at it for years.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's break this down a bit. So, when we say micro teaching, what are we actually talking about?
Right, good question. So the sources paint a pretty clear picture. Essentially, it comes down to teaching a small chunk of content, just a small piece, to a small group. I think maybe 6 to 10 people, something like that.
Gotcha. Small scale.
Yeah, definitely small scale. And for a short burst of time, maybe 5 to 10 minutes.
Okay, so it's like a concentrated teaching session.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And what's interesting is it's not just about, delivering this tiny lesson.
Right. There's got to be more to it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The sources actually point out two main goals, two purposes for micro-teaching.
Okay, lay it on me.
So first, and this probably seems pretty intuitive, it's an amazing tool for those who are new to teaching, like student teachers. It's a way for them to develop those crucial teaching skills, but in a more manageable setting, a less intimidating environment.
Yeah, that makes sense. Starting small, getting your feet wet.
Right. But here's the thing, and this is the second big goal. It's also used to help seasoned teachers who've been doing this for a while, pinpoint areas where they want to improve, maybe refine a specific skill.
Ah, so it's like professional development, even for experienced folks.
Exactly. It's about constantly growing and evolving as an educator.
Love it. So we've got the what, the why, but I'm a practical person. Give me the how. Can we see how this micro-teaching thing actually plays out?
Absolutely. The sources give us some fantastic examples. Let's take a look at one from the world of commerce, this scenario around banking functions. Imagine a teacher starting a lesson by simply asking the students, have you ever been to a bank?
So simple, yet so smart.
Right. It immediately taps into those potential real-world experiences.
And I bet it grabs their attention too. I mean, who hasn't been to a bank or at least seen one? It's relevant to their lives.
Totally. And then the teacher might follow up with something like, okay, has anyone ever opened an account? And then they could ask, what documents would you need for that? Like ID proof, a photo, maybe a PAN card.
Okay, I'm seeing how this builds, how the teacher guides the conversation.
Exactly. And to really nail it down, they could even get more specific, like, give me some examples of ID proof.
Yeah.
Students might answer, a passport, a driving license, a bank passbook. See, it's this neat little sequence, starting broad and then getting into the nitty-gritty, all in a short time frame.
Very cool. And this is all happening within, what, 5-10 minutes?
That's the idea, yeah. And what's really interesting here is it's not about teaching them everything about banking, right? It's not a full-blown lecture.
Yeah, it's targeted.
Exactly, super focused. It could be about, let's say, mastering the skill of starting a discussion or eliciting specific information from students. Micro-teaching lets the teacher zoom in on that particular technique.
Okay, so that's the commerce example. What else do we have?
Well, how about one from the world of mathematics? This one deals with the area of a cylinder. So picture this. The teacher holds up a sheet of paper, maybe to represent the surface of the cylinder, and asks, how can we separate this sheet into different parts?
Interesting way to start. I like the visual element.
Right. It's a great way to make it tangible. And the students might say, we can divide it into 3 parts.
Okay, I'm following. 3 parts to a cylinder, sure.
And then they talk about the shapes of those parts. Circles for the top and bottom, and a rectangle for that curved side.
Makes sense.
And here comes the formula part, par for the circles area, and LXB for the rectangle.
Right, the classic formulas.
Yeah, exactly. And what's cool is that the teacher can use this to connect what the students already know about circles and rectangles with this new concept of a cylinders area. It builds on their existing knowledge.
That's a really important point. Linking new concepts to existing knowledge.
Right. It helps them see the connections. And the example ends with the teacher saying, this is how we can start to understand the area of a cylinder. clear and concise.
I like it.
So both of these examples, the commerce one and the math one, they really highlight how these short, focused interactions, these bursts of teaching, can be used to work on specific skills. It's not about cramming in a ton of content, but about really honing in on the art of teaching on a smaller scale.
It's like practicing your scales on the piano before you tackle a whole concerto.
Perfect analogy.
Ugh.
And to help teachers really refine those skills, polish them up, micro-teaching relies heavily on observation and feedback.
Oh, that makes sense. You need someone watching, giving you pointers.
Right. And that's where these detailed observation charts come in. Our sources actually delve pretty deep into these.
Fill me in. What are these charts all about?
Okay, so they basically provide a very structured way to evaluate specific teaching skills.
Mm-hmm.
For example, we've got this general observation chart that looks at a bunch of things, like how the teacher grabs the student's attention at the beginning, how they utilize what the students already know, the tools and techniques they use.
Wow, that's pretty comprehensive.
It is. It also looks at how the teacher keeps the lesson flowing smoothly, how they use their words and body language, and how they connect the lesson to new ideas.
Okay, so it's really looking at all the different facets of teaching.
It really is. And each of these points is rated on a scale of 1 to 5.
Ah, so you can actually quantify the observation, make it objective.
Precisely. And then it gets even more specific with charts like the observation chart of explanation skill. This one lists out desirable behaviors that are observed. For example, does the teacher start with a clear introduction? Do they link their explanation smoothly? Do they define technical terms clearly?
Oh, that's helpful. So you're not just saying, oh, the explanation was good. You're looking at specific things.
That's the point.
Yeah.
It's all about specific, actionable feedback. And it also lists undesirable behaviors, like if the explanation is a bit choppy, if they're using incorrect terms or confusing language or overly complicated examples.
It's like a checklist of do's and don'ts for explanations.
Pretty much. It really helps the teacher identify their strengths and weaknesses when it comes to explaining things.
Makes sense.
Then there's this observation chart of questioning skill, which is even more detailed. It's broken down into structure, process, and product.
Okay, questioning skills. I imagine that's a big one.
Huge. So let's start with structure.
Yeah.
Here, the observer's looking at things like, are the questions grammatically correct? Are they concise? Are they relevant to the topic? Are they specific enough?
Oh, that's interesting. I'd never really thought about the actual structure of a question.
It's subtle, but it makes a big difference. Then you've got the process of questioning, which is all about how the teacher asks the questions. Things like, are they asking questions too quickly or too slowly? What's their tone of voice like? Do they ask questions in a way that flows smoothly?
Oh, yeah, the delivery, that's super important.
Absolutely. And also, do they direct questions to the whole class? Do they repeat questions? Do they give students enough time to think before answering?
So it's not just about the words, but how you ask the questions.
Exactly. It's about creating that space for student participation. And then we move to the product, which focuses on the outcomes of the questioning. It looks at things like, does the teacher repeat the answers to make sure everyone's got it? Do they ask follow-up questions to get students thinking more deeply?
Ah, so it's like using questions to guide them towards deeper understanding, not just checking if they know the answer.
Exactly. It's about pushing them further. And do they try to get more information out of the students? Or redirect the discussion if it starts to go off on a tangent? Or bounce questions around to different students so everyone's involved?
Wow, this is really detailed.
It is. And ultimately, it's all about helping the teacher use questions to foster critical thinking in their students.
Okay, I'm seeing how this all ties back to those 5 to 10-minute micro lessons. Even if you're just focusing on one tiny aspect of questioning, that concentrated observation and feedback can be really powerful for professional growth.
Right. It's like laser-focused skill development. So, taking a step back, our deep dive has revealed that micro-teaching is all about these focused, short teaching sessions aimed at developing specific skills for both new and experienced educators. And the magic happens through these targeted mini lessons and those detailed observation charts.
Makes you wonder why we don't apply this approach in more areas of life, right? I mean, think about all the complex skills we try to master.
That's a really good point. It does make you think. So for you listening, here's something to ponder. How could you use this concept of micro-teaching in your own life? Could you break down a skill you're trying to learn into smaller chunks and then get specific feedback on those smaller pieces? It's a really interesting concept to consider.
Absolutely. Food for thought.